Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Leon Legray podcast. Your host, as always. So today's episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. And before we begin talking on today's episode, I want to just give you a few words of our sponsors. And one of our newest sponsors that I've brought into the Leon Legray podcast is ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN. It's a VPN that's been highly rated as one of the best VPNs out there, and I do recommend ExpressVPN too, which you can use on your phone. You can use a VPN for your router and any device out there too, universally too. I think it's one of the best VPN services that they've made so far, and I definitely recommend ExpressVPN. So if you have not tried it out yet, you should, and it's one of the best out there too. In fact, when you go and check out on the ExpressVPN, make sure to put the promo code LLGPod, and that is LLGPod. If you use the promo code onto your checkout, and that way you'll be helping the channel out from here too. Now, the second sponsor that we have for today is Brave. Brave I've been using for many months. Brave is something I've been using for some time, for now several years now, and I've enjoyed it. And Brave is one of those browsers that is secure and it's private. And if you wanted to get away from Firefox or Chrome or any of those corporate browsers out there too, please be sure to check up on Brave. You will not be disappointed. Then, last but not least, I have a hosting provider that I've been using for some time, which is Podbean. Podbean I've been using for, I'd say for about 8 months right now too, and so far not disappointed, and it's been working out very much greatly for me too. So, but by the way, if you're looking to sign up for a hosting provider like, let's just say Podbean, that is a good time right now to make a switch. In fact, I definitely recommend checking out Podbean. It is a very good hosting provider too. There is no limits on audio and how much you can post over on the audio side, which it is great. Now, the tutorials on Podbean, they make it really easy to find out how to work away with Podbean, which I recommend as well. And Blueberry, which Blueberry is something I am affiliated with, that I use for statistics and see who are listening to my podcasts as well too. So I am affiliated with both hosting providers and statistics services as well. So if you want to, go ahead and check it out. I'll have the links down below. Now, with that further said, let's go on to today's episode. And today's episode is going to be about retail and my experience, what I've gone through working in the retail space before COVID-19. Hello, everybody. Leon back here again, over with a brand new podcast. And so this time on the episode, we're going to be going back into, let's just put it this way, since I know everything is just almost about shutting down everywhere, I think it's just going to be a very good time to talk about, well, things that's going around in the world right now, and especially the things that's been happening over down on the retail space. And as everybody may have had known, this is a very much a very hard time for everybody. And I've got definitely, this needs to be said. And so I know that I've had other talks I wanted to talk about, and I figured, why not? Let me just go ahead and give you my perspective of what I think about the retail space and what's changing, things like that too. And because this is really hurting a lot of people. And if you think about it right there too, it's definitely hurting a lot of small businesses with all the shutdowns here in the United States, but not just the United States, but all over the globe. And here's where I see this right there too. I mean, if I look at it this way, the retail space was still going on a crawl before the pandemic, and here's how I see this. The I mean, it was still struggling even to begin with, and I know that it may not be a shocker to anybody right there too, and so we've got to come and talk about right here how this is still going to be, if retail is still going to be around. And honestly, in my honest opinion, I don't even think retail is going to last with everything going on, and with the major cities like New York, San Francisco, California, all these big cities that are going through a tough time trying to keep their space running, and nobody is shopping. And so, what are people going to do? So, it'll be a good time to talk about the situation, how I think about everything that's coming around right here, too. And the way we're going to go into talking about this right there, too, is for me, the pandemic, it's definitely changing a lot of people's minds. Now, I'm not saying that, well, let me put it this way. I am saying that it is definitely going to hurt a lot more businesses going forward, and will they survive? Not all of them, unfortunately. Not all of them. So, and I've read some articles even from before all this happened too. And now, if we can look at it this way too, I mean, I've actually knew the implementations of what was going to happen, and I was working retail even before this came along right there too. And I remember one of the few main things I've noticed when I've worked in retail, and I will tell you my story, my experiences as a salesman, as someone that worked in electronic retail. And once upon a time, I've worked on a store called BrandsMart USA, and it is a electronic store which started in South Florida. And my experience with BrandsMart was actually pretty cool, to believe it or not. I've worked there for 3 months over in the season, and it was really cool to spend the time, learn the products, things like that, what was coming, right? And I loved the fact that you've worked in the retail space. You know firsthand what you're doing, what products you were working with, and so that was one of the main things I saw when I was working in retail. And this is not easy. And a lot of people think retail is easy, and I have to tell you the truth, people, that anyone that is listening for the first time, before this so-called thing, COVID-19 started. And let me just put it this way. And throughout my experience with retail, it is not an easy thing if you're working in retail, especially in sales. Now, do you get some sort of experience going through working in sales? Yeah, so you do. That's one thing I liked about working in. What can I put it this way? When you're working in retail, yeah, you definitely get experiences, and there's tons of benefits for working in sales, because for one, you can take that with you, and you can use to work with other bigger retail stores, and use that to collect commissions, which that's something I did as well too. And I was working over on the computer department at the time. And so, as someone that was working in the computer department as a computer specialist, that they call it, computer specialists, I knew what was in the sales floor, and one of the main things I've actually sold, and I sold a lot of tablets when I was working over in the computer department, that department right there too. Now, just to mind you that that store I was working in was actually a very small store, which actually expanded all the way up to Georgia State. And so I know that BrandSmart, BrandSmart, they have it in South Florida, where they've actually have a lot of stores down in South Florida, and I'm sure that they're doing very much well over down there. But in Georgia State, it's a different market. A lot of people go where it's like very trendy and something that people will go. And now, thing with BrandSmart is what BrandSmart is pretty much known for is refrigerators and freezers and kitchenwares, and a lot of people will go upstairs and they will go ahead and buy the refrigerators and the freezers that they know. And BrandSmart, it's not like known for having all these high end computers, right? And I sometimes when I've worked down in the computer aisles, right, I definitely got discouraged having to work down in the lower floor at the time. And why I decided to work with BrandSmart, for one, I needed work and I needed the job to support myself, for one, and that was the main reason. And that was why I figured it would be a good time to shine a light about retail and give you guys some in-depth detail why I wanted to talk about this. Because for one, if anyone is talking about going to retail, now sales are going to be important too. Now, if you want to know how to sell your own items, probably that's good. That's a good enough skill to take into consideration. Probably sell your own stuff and probably learn the numbers, how to sell your own things when you're doing. Not say have your own retail store. For one, I wouldn't recommend getting a retail store up, because retail with this, it's not even recommended, because if you start to bring a store up, let's just say, I will tell you is that you're going to get clobbered and your store is not going to be up for so long because of this whole COVID-19 thing. And my thoughts about COVID-19 will be different from other people. Now, these are businesses that are getting destroyed terribly, as far as I can see. And you're definitely going to get a lot of reports about how you got malls such as J.C. Penney's, Macy's, Nordstrom. They're not doing so well, right? And those spaces, I mean, for all I know, that those spaces are not going to last long, and they're not going to really last for the long term, as I can see. And one of the guys that I actually watch over on his library channel, his name is Eli the Computer Guy, and I watch his material. And actually, before what I've known him, he did a lot of tech tutorials, things that he's done that pretty much shined a light on what I didn't even knew, right? And I didn't watch all of his material, but there was a lot of things he said that made a lot of sense. And plus, he's in that tech industry, so he knows what he's talking about too. So if you guys are interested in a more in-depth tech tutorials and tech commentary, Eli the Computer Guy is a great channel. He's still on YouTube, which is awesome. So in his channels, he talks about how Amazon is actually potentially going to be buying mall spaces. And so that's an interesting one to I'm thinking about right there, like how that's going to work out with Amazon. And you look at it this way too. Amazon, it's huge. It's a monopoly for one, and they're taking over almost everything right there, as I can see it here too. And one of the things I could take note is that, like, for instance, like overstock it's almost like an overstock, right? Now, it's not like everybody talks about overstock all the time, and overstock isn't as huge. That's a bit unfortunate because they've been around throughout the early days of the internet too, which if my memory serves me right, they've been around this early too. So if you guys want to check out Overstock.com, they do sell a lot of great stuff as well. And I'm sure that like a place like Overstock could have taken over a mall, and pretty much people can use that to buy electronics, groceries, home goods, things like that too. And I am sure that there's going to be an Amazon on every available space, empty space in a mall, and they can use that to for people to come over and buy whatever, right? And that right there, I can see that happening too. Now, instead of just going to a local grocery store, then people are going to look into going to, guess what? Where? A mall to buy their stuff too. So that's going to be a huge leap right there too when it comes down to it too, because I look at Amazon as a monopoly. And in the way I see why they're a monopoly, because this is how I'm saying this right here, because for one, Amazon it's a very huge company right now too. It ships all over the world, and well, of course, one of the biggest consumers is the U.S., the U.K., Australia, New Zealand, and a lot of major first world countries. Which all of us are big consumers. We consume a lot. And while you have other countries like second or third world are producing a lot our stuff, a lot of our stuff for us, of course. But so, and I'm thinking right here, so I can definitely see Amazon just buying office spaces, retail spaces, so people can start buying. So, and I know a lot of the smaller spaces, like especially where I've worked as a computer specialist, and to me, I don't even think there's not going to be too many of these jobs anymore, because you're going to have all these companies buying out smaller spaces. And here I will say this: I don't know how good the future is going to hold for retail and office spaces, because that's a really hard thing to say. I really do think it's really hard how this is going to come down to it too. And here I am going to be taking a read over on TechCrunch, and this is pretty much what Eli the computer guy was saying over his channel. And this is something I'm going to be reading up over here and taking a look over here, which says the future of retail and office spaces is up in the air, and prop tech investors are optimistic. So let's take a read right here, and I've read this a bit too, and I will have the link down below in the description for everyone that wants to read the full article, which I'm only going to read just a piece of it, which says here, the malls and grocery stores of the 20th century are being converted into industrial conveyor belts of goods and services, traveling from the internet to your home. The consumer is no longer allowed inside, as Connie Laszlo details this week in a closer look at Amazon and other online first companies taking over commercial spaces near you. And this is not a surprise, and I think a lot of people knew that this was coming. And here's my thing about Amazon. Like, I like Amazon because what it has become, and it's pretty much a big American story. If you look at it this way too. I mean, one guy started Amazon in his home, and it just became such an American story. And where I don't like about Amazon now, for me, is it's become so monopolistic. It's destroying competition. And to me, I love competition. I want people to look at other places. If there's one place that they want to go and support, then they can do that too. And why I wouldn't see myself supporting Amazon in the future, I will definitely explain that in another episode, probably later on too, and how I can see that, how I can see this is becoming monopolistic. But today I want to definitely give you my in-depth details, because the idea I wanted to talk about on this episode was because someone I actually talked to, and he has a podcast called Geeks in the City, and it was someone that I've talked to, spoken to. He wanted to get to know my podcast, which he was really nice to. He really friendly and really nice to talk with, and it was awesome talking with him. I like the guy. His name is Burger, and I will have the links down below on the description on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get to listen to your podcast. But he and I, we were talking, and he wanted to get to know me, so it was pretty cool. And right after the show, we went ahead and talked about his experience and my experience about retail, how it all came down to. And retail, as something I've known when I worked at retail first time in 2010, back when I was working in stocking pretty much. I mean, it was cool when I worked in stocking, but I never got to fully experience the sales when I started working with BrandsMart, basically. And so for someone that I've worked in retail, I said this to myself, like, man, I don't know how much I'll be making, but I know that I know that I'll be definitely making a killing. At first, I wasn't a very good salesman, and when you are selling things to the public, right, you have to know how you're gonna bring this to people, how you're gonna sell this to people, what makes this a awesome tablet, what makes this a great product, how come you are selling this. So there are many reasons how it comes down to it too. And all the products I've sold on BrandsMart when I was working there for a short amount of time was that you really have to get yourself out there, right? And make sure that you sell the most items out there in your departments. That was one of the main things that I've realized with retail, that even though you are working with the public, with many people out there, the customers, but what makes it so competitive is not just that, but your co-workers definitely want that commission as well. It's such a very vicious cycle. I mean, you're just making the money, but you're the co-workers right there as well too. And here even though I kind of despise some of them, not all of them, of course, that worked in my department, but this is one thing, is that we try to keep our numbers as high as we can, and make sure that we've get to a certain amount of numbers. And also, when we are selling to people, or when we are helping a customer, we have to upprice them by selling them extra junk that's not necessary. For instance, like cable television, right, or fiber television. Like, here's the problem with cable and fiber television. Like, who is gonna buy all this garbage? Let's be honest. Who is gonna buy all this nonsense with cable television? Like, nobody buys that anymore too, as much as I do. To me, I left that all behind too, and that was back in 2013. And I'm sure there were still people using cable television, or fiber television as some call it, but my gosh, that was just a waste. And I think the average person nowadays knows already that cable television, I think it's just a dead medium. And when everyone is looking to buy anything like television, you definitely have the internet, video internet platforms such as Hulu and Netflix, pretty much competing with each other too, and they have all these original channels. Oh, let me not forget Amazon. Amazon is in the video service as well. So, and that kind of made me think, it's like, who is going to buy extra crap? And plus, like, for cable, your package may be about $60 to $70, right? And you try to upsell the customer as much as you can, and that was something I frustrated me the most, was just the upsell with selling AT&T packages, which now for me, I thought, man, I don't know if I even want to sell them the package, because for one, when you are talking about selling it to a product to people, they don't want to hear the extra spiel, right? They don't want to spend extra money. Some of them do, but all of them don't. And that's one that kind of drove me crazy in the retail space, and just made me think, what the hell? What the hell is that? and and that's one of the main things that made me frustrated about working with retail. But at the same time, I want to take retail, thinking that it was a bad thing to do. No, not really. And what I liked about retail was that you can talk to the public and you can talk to people face to face. It having this conversation of people around that you couldn't do, which I really liked about that. When you've worked with the public for the first time, and though it's not like I haven't before. I mean, I got to talk to people outside, but someone, as I myself was pretty much introverted, just mostly in myself. But I got better and better over time too, because for me, when I've talked with customers, a lot of them were English customers, but then the same way I felt too was that I got to improve my Spanish when I was speaking with Spanish customers as well that couldn't speak a lick of English. So my coworkers were like, hey Leon, I need your help right here. This is a Spanish family. They need some help, and I'll go like, okay, I'm coming. I'll help you with the customer too. And some of them right there, where I've noticed that if they weren't buying computers, they were buying cell phones. And a lot of them were buying cell phones to families that were overseas, and in good reason why they would buy phones and send it to their families overseas, because for one, the electronics, like I'll give an example. Like Brazil, for instance, they have the highest sales tax, and there's no way like the average Brazilian will go and start overpaying electronics. And that's absolutely no way they're going to spend extra on electronics that they wouldn't want to over with Brazil. And even today, it still hasn't changed. It's still the same thing with the high sales tax right there too. So so you've had people like, especially like people in Central America and South America, that are doing the best to send them a cell phone like an iPhone or a cheap electronic Android phone. So that was one of the reasons they would call me and say, hey, can you help me out and translate this back? So that was real cool. What I liked about that was that I got to improve my communication skills much better. And even though it wasn't so bad, but at the same rate, when you're just stuck inside in your computer, you really don't get that much conversation, when you're working on your own remotely. So that's one right here. I can just put it. Now, the other thing I will say is, and when I was in the computer department, now, fortunately enough, I've got to a point that I didn't just sell computers, tablets, laptops, and all that stuff, right? And I did knew about megapixels cameras, so I got to sell a few of them that I did, which I was fortunate enough to. But however, even though I was told not to sell any cameras, because for one, that was only there for people over at the camera department to sell. Now, I got to sell some, not all of them, unfortunately, because one of the guys were kind of a stuck up pain in the neck. So, and for me, and there were other reasons behind that. For one, when one of the guys that weren't there to help customers out, I had to go ahead and stick up and say, okay, let me just go ahead and sell this camera. And since for some reason one of the guys in the camera department didn't show up on time, or what, he was dilly dallying. Either way, that was to a point that was irritating me as heck. So, and I'm one kind of the guys that I said I can go like being like, all right, I don't know why these people aren't here to help the customers. There should be somebody here to help these people out. I really don't understand that. So I had to stick my neck up and help the customer with a camera, if it was from Canon, Nikon, Sony, whatever, right? Whatever camera the customers were looking to get, I would help them as best as I can. So I had that neat experience having to work with camera and over in the camera department for a short amount of time there as well. So for the main part, I think what was the kind of the hitting point for me when you've had when you were working in retail, and what was very frustrating was that during the time, like the company Brandsmart, they decided not to continue to sell desktop computers. Now, funny was that desktop computers was still a thing too, even though like the PC market back in the early 2010s wasn't like in its highs, because for one, you've had consoles, you've had a console that it was kind of a takeover over the consoles, while you still had PC gamers going around playing PC games, which was still cool. I mean, put it this way, you've got PC gamers that were playing. Now, they just didn't carry graphics card. They didn't carry all the stuff that any essential gamer wanted to get, right? So everything was pretty much for the customers and was already built right in the box, right? And there was no consumer choices. So they would have to go to a PC essential shop, right? Or PC essential, what do you call these places? Like a DIY computer store that they would have to buy the essential parts that they wanted to build the PC, right? So for Brandsmart, it wasn't like that too, because what mostly just give you a description of what that store was like, and for anyone that doesn't know, and pretty much Brandsmart, so pretty much which contains nothing but electronics, like I mentioned, computers, camcorders, video cameras, cell phones, mattresses, televisions, all that stuff right there too. And then what I remember back then, that I remember clearly, was that was pretty much the start of 4K. So 4K was just beginning, and now to note right here too, that was something like 4K was still being purchased right from the very beginning, and the prices were still high. So I don't think a lot of people were just buying into 4K just as of yet. I mean, now today, they're still expensive today, 4K televisions, but it wasn't like a big deal where you can just go out and buy a 4K television and then expect that to be something that you can just go ahead and buy right off the bat, you know? And in fact, 8K wasn't even developed as of yet too. So that 8K was starting to come out around 2015, 2016. So we're still seeing 8K rollouts still. I mean, the earliest, in fact, probably the earliest ones too, but there were no demand for 8K as of yet. I mean, still, that is still overkill. You look at it this way too. You have to think, that is there really a demand for these products, right? And that was one thing. It was that you don't know who is your buyer, and you have to know who are you going to be selling these products to. So, and that was one thing when I looked over across the other side of the store, and many there were still people buying actually 1080p televisions, and they were still affordable back then too, and the prices were still down. Even this day, I have to remember. Well, I mean, you had people in my department buying tablets, buying laptops, and laptops were still a thing too, by the way, and so it hasn't completely died out then. So and it still won't, because the truth of the matter is that a lot of people want to have a comfortable operating system, and as far as work on the go like an Android or iPhone, I don't know. Like it doesn't serve it that well to so many people, and for many reasons. One, the processor on the computers are much powerful than any mobile phone. If I have to be real, and let's be real for one, because I would rather go and purchase a laptop over a mobile phone anytime, really. And to me, that was one thing I find very essential. Is when I'm buying, I want to figure out what I'm buying too as well. And now I enjoyed some of the customers that came in and made their purchases right there too, right? And it was great. There were many that were being a stuck up pain in the neck, you know. And I having to think about it too. I'm glad I don't work in that environment anymore too, because it is definitely a challenging demand, and you have to be very very patient with people. And sometimes they're not all customers are nasty, but plenty of them are. They're very very nasty when it comes to sales. But I remember when I worked those 3 months working in a retail. I remember, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm gonna go work in retail anymore. And many times I've thought about it. I'm glad I don't anymore, because the I say that retail now has so many problems too, because there's not going to be many people are going to be shopping anymore because of this so-called crisis that we have, and it just hurts to see these businesses going down. Now, for all I can say was that even then, even back then when I was working around pre 2020, I mean retail was still having its troubles. So, not to say that it's it it's still it wasn't before. It still had its issues because of the fact that a lot of people were shopping online over the internet. So take that to account that they were still having these issues even before this pandemic. So that was no surprise. And for what I can tell you is that with this whole takeover of this whole technocracy of Amazon, of the Amazons of the world, the Facebookers of the world, and yeah, to me, would I ever see Facebook being as big as Amazon? Well, yeah, because you look at this way too. I do think at some point that they will start taking over so many commercial line, clothing line, and having their own products as well. I do think, in my own personal experiences, or my own personal take on this was that I saw this when I was working retail. I saw this retail to be a very much a dying thing. I don't think it was going to last forever, right? I mean, nothing does too. And it's like how people said that oh, Main Street was going to be the big thing for a long time. Not really. But when the malls came around, and I remember I was someone that used to enjoy going to the malls. The malls was a big thing, you know, and there was things that I could see in the going to the malls and seeing things that I couldn't see in my local stores, right? And that's why I love going to the malls. I love going to the bookstores that I couldn't find in my local area. So that was one thing I loved doing, that because I was a mall kid back then too. And that's something a lot of people don't even look into malls or big box retail stores anymore. Now you got the Amazon of the world, the Overstocks, the um the um, the e-commerce guys that are taking over, right? So you and looking at it right now, you got people are barely leaving their house except for groceries. So there's that right there too. And you got to look at it this way. Those things aren't going to last forever. And also putting in my final notes right here too. Even I can mark it right here too. Like even if for any of you Gen Zers out there too, or Gen Zoomers, wherever you call yourselves nowadays, I remember when I was young. Here's one thing to for some of you folks that don't get it. When I was young, I remember going to a camera store, and there was such things as camera stores back then too. And my gosh, I didn't see all of them last that long too, because they were closing down left and right because a lot of people weren't buying cameras all the time. So those spaces pretty much were gone out on off of flash. Excuse me. They were not they weren't staying in stores that long, and so you look at it this way: those camera stores aren't going to be the bleeding edge for so long. And nowadays, you can just find a camera online where you already have stock photo, and you can and do the 360 degree and take a look at where is everything, where the inputs and outputs and things like that too. You can look into right there too. So those camera stores aren't even in existence anymore. I remember a bookstore called Walden Books I used to go when inside of a mall when I was a kid. That's not there anymore. And yeah, those are just kind of the two examples. And right, and one bookstore I can actually think right on top of my mind, I should say, is Barnes and Nobles. Right, Barnes and Nobles are still around, and Books a Millions. That's actually close to my area. So here's the thing: they aren't gonna last forever. Those physical copy books, and I thought those physical copies weren't gonna be the big thing anymore too. When I worked there too, I actually do remember selling um, Barnes and Noble's Nook tablets just for a certain amount of time. And I remember tablets was starting to become a big thing, and I don't know, it was such a weird trend. It's like people bought it, but then now a lot of people aren't buying them right there too. So that was the weird part of working in electronics, was that um, when you thought it was a trend, it's not really. It was more of a fad. So no, I don't think it's gonna last that long, because these trends, in fact, these trends, or so-called trends, I should put it this way, they aren't gonna last forever too. And how long did the tablet fad lasted? I'd say about 2 years. And nowadays, there's no such thing as an exclusive tablet anymore. So for one, all these tablets are basically pretty much out of existence. In fact, I could take a look right here to see what tablets are out there. Oh yeah, like see, for example, you got the Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 tablets, which, okay, you got some tablets are up on the air right there too, and the iPad Air 4 design. So yeah, there are some tablets that are being sold left and right, but this isn't like a major thing anymore, right? When it was a big trend, no, that was when people said, "Man, that's very innovating. I can go ahead and buy a tablet for my son or daughter for their school stuff," right? And to me, I found this more of a business, um, venture than having to treat this for your sons or daughters for their level of education, because the school systems, they were still dealing with paper and note taking at the time, so they weren't going full electronic. No, 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 no. That wasn't how it all worked. So, and that was one thing a lot of people have to remember. Um, those things can go, they can stay for some time and they'll leave. And I remember working there, and I thought to myself, man, I was a really good salesman. I made a lot of commissions, selling extra commissions. In fact, like warranties was a big thing too. If I wasn't selling cable packages, then I would add warranties into it too, and I would ask the customer, say, hey, would you want me to add a warranty to it too? And I had many that said yes, because they knew that I was a good salesman, and they would do it just because they wanted to feel good and adding the extra money to it. And I had many that said no, not really. So I was like, okay, that sounds good. You don't have to put the extra warranty. That's all great. So that was one thing I've noticed when I worked in retail, and it's all because of the additional warranties to a product. And in fact, this what made it appropriate enough was the additional warranties for mattresses. And I'm sure those people that were working in the mattresses at the time were making killing off the extra commissions. And I'm sure, honestly, I'm sure it was the thing right there. And now I have to say, like, for the record, I don't even regret it working in retail. But by the time I got out of the season, I thought, man, I didn't even know what to do, and they let me go off right after the season was over too. And for a moment, I remember the boss was like, "I'm gonna see if I can have you stay in BrandSmart, yada yada, right?" And so what happened was that they took me out and they didn't let me stay. So because of reasons, right? And that was one thing is something I don't miss in the retail space was they say they're gonna keep you right after the season, but if you put it this way, and the truth of the matter is that they do not care about your needs. Let's put it this way too. And I remember I've talked this with Burger over from Geeks in the City, and I've agreed 100%. They do not care about your interests. Let's put it this way: they do not. It doesn't matter, boss or what. Absolutely doesn't give a rat ass what your needs are too, if you're going through any situation. Because at this point, I mean, by the time you gone through being a salesman or saleswoman, then you can actually use these skills to be your own entrepreneur and sell your own stuff, because at this point, a lot of people are becoming their own self-made, becoming their self-made business online too. Is it hard? Absolutely. But there's a challenge to it too. So there's people out there making a living for it too. So it doesn't hurt to start a e-commerce business afterwards too. Because hey, guess what? Who's doing pretty well? Those people over on Dr. Satch. Dr. Satch is doing good with selling their soaps, their toothbrushes, their hair shampoos, all that. They're doing really well. Absolutely too. So, yeah, I encourage anybody that's listening. I would say e-businesses are the way to go. There's challenges along the way, but it isn't too late to do it too, unless if you think about it and work hard on your invention, what it is. I encourage that. I absolutely do, because at the end of the day, what happens if these unique e-commerce stores or these small shops are going to be around? Do you think you're ever going to see one out in the real world? Not all of them, of course. Now, the only ones that are going to be up, of course, are just major chains like the Targets, the Walmarts, the grocery chains like the Krogers, the Aldis, or why not too. So you gotta look at the bigger picture and say to yourself that, is it worth having to go through working in retail? I can't be someone to decide for you too, but that's something you've got to look into and think about right there as well for all my listeners. Now since I've rambled on a lot right there. I'm going to go and put this podcast on close and pretty much end this way too. And say that as much as I hate how things are transforming with everything being bought in the retail space and less competition in the future, you've got to look at it this way too. There's always people are always going to look into doing something different and finding a new innovation along the way. When one thing goes down, there's always going to be a new bird out in the sky as an opportunity to shine down on you. And if you don't take the opportunity to create something different, then you're out of luck. You really are. When you are an entrepreneur or a business, and if you can't compete, that's going to be pretty much terrible on you. That you didn't start out early enough that you could have before. Never let the opportunity go, because at this point, the electronic world, the e-commerce world, it's going to be a very tough position to be where you're at. But I don't know. Like, to me, I did my own thing with my own gig with working on a clothing store, right? Not easy enough. Was not easy. A lot of tough work to be involved when you're doing drop shipping, all that stuff. So it's very challenging. Now, drop shipping is another one to think about. And there are people that are into the drop shipping business, and many of them are successful. I salute to those people that are very successful doing that too. I'll never take that away from people that are going through drop shipping. You know, I want people to do what makes them successful, what does best for them too as well. But regardless of what I say, do your thing. I don't let anybody discourage you, because there are so many people that can say you can't really do it. There's no way you can do this and that. This is a challenging, that is really challenging for you to do. There's going to be all these haters and all these people that can put you down, that can tell you all these things. But for what I can tell you is you cannot let people change you. You've got to make sure that you know what you want to do for your business, even if people can't see that. And that, which is true. So there we go. That's what I got to say for this episode right here. So if you were a first-time listener and listen to my podcast for the very first time, be sure to drop a rating and review. And if you like this kind of episode, this pretty much this different direction that I did with the podcast, and if you do like it, let me know. What do you think about it too? I'd be interested in talking more of my background, my story, things like that too. I'll be happy to talk about my experiences with technology, electronics, things, all that right there too. And I figured I named this episode, my experience working with retail was something I wanted to do for some time, just never had the chance to do this episode, because with all the things I have to do, because plus I'm a business owner myself, so I have to take care of business. So besides podcasting, I have other things I have to work on the side, so, and take care of myself too, of course. So if you like to support me in any way, I will have the PayPal link down below. And if you want to be a long-time supporter, you can hit me on qfi.com/Leon LeGray to help me right there too. I'll have all the descriptions down on the description down below. So make sure to check up on that too if you want to support me, or go through my affiliate links if you want to help me support me from here. So that said, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your Sunday, wherever you are. Ciao for now.